My son once wrote to me, in a message I still wish I never opened. Mom, don't expect me to take care of you in old age. I have my own life and family now. I read it 3 times, hoping my eyes were wrong. But they weren't. Those words were real, sharp, cold, final. They hit me harder than any illness or accident ever could. A mother spends decades raising a child, believing love circles back one day. Instead, I got a sentence that felt like a door closing forever. I sat at my kitchen table in silence. No TV on, no radio, just the sound of the refrigerator humming like it didn't care either. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, reminding me I was aging by the second, alone. His message kept glowing on the screen, each word louder in my head than the last. A part of me waited for another text, maybe a soft "sorry mom," bad wording, or "I didn't mean it like that." But nothing came. Not that night. Not the next. It was as if he sent the message, put the phone down, and walked out of the idea of me completely. I cried, quietly, the way older people cry. Not loud sobs, just a slow leaking of memories. Birthday parties, school projects, scraped knees I kissed better, nights sitting beside him when he was sick and burning with fever. I thought of the time he said, at 8 years old, "Mom, when you're old I'll take care of you like you take care of me." Funny how children make promises without knowing life can change them. But I'm not here just to complain. I'm here to tell you what happened after. Because what came later is something even I didn't expect. The next morning, after barely sleeping, I made tea the way I always do, 2 sugars, splash of milk. Routine comforts the heart, even when it's broken. I sat there thinking, if my own son doesn't want responsibility, then maybe I shouldn't give him what he expects either. The thought was small, like a whisper in the back of my mind, but it grew. It grew until it became a decision. I called my lawyer, a calm woman named Linda, who had kind eyes and a voice like warm bread. She asked if I was sure about the changes I wanted to make. I told her yes. My hand trembled as I signed the new documents, but I didn't stop. "Things change," I said. She nodded, though I could tell she wanted to ask what happened. I didn't tell her. Not yet. It felt too fresh, too humiliating. When I got home, the house felt different. Bigger, emptier. I made my bed even though there was no one to unmake it. I arranged flowers in the vase, lilies, my favorite, because I needed something beautiful to look at. I kept replaying that message in my mind. I have my own life and family. A line people in the comments would repeat for sure. For the next few days, I stayed busy. Cooking, cleaning, tending the garden. Pretending life was normal. But it wasn't. Something inside me shifted. I wasn't the same mother who forgave everything. I wasn't the woman who waited by the phone on holidays, hoping for a call that sometimes never came. I felt older, yes, but also strangely clearer. Free, in a way. And then, 5 days later, as I was preparing breakfast, I heard loud banging at my door. Not knocking, banging. My heart jumped. When I opened it, my son stood there, breathless, angry, and scared all at once. "Mom," he said sharply, "we need to talk. Right now." I didn't know why he came. Not yet. But what he said next, that was only the beginning. When he stood at my door that morning, a cold February wind behind him, it took me a moment to recognize the boy I raised beneath the man he had become. His shoulders were stiff, jaw tight, eyes darting like someone searching for something, maybe answers, maybe control. But before we get to what he wanted that day, you need to understand who he used to be. Because stories like this don't start in anger, they start in love. His name is Michael, my only child, the miracle I waited 7 years for. When he was little, he was gentle. He'd pick dandelions and bring them inside like they were rare roses. He'd fall asleep on my chest watching cartoons, his small hand clutching my shirt as if letting go meant losing the world. I remember birthday cakes with uneven candles, school mornings rushed but full of laughter, nights when he'd whisper, "Stay with me till I sleep." And I always did. We didn't have much, small house, modest income, but we had warmth. We had dinners together, Sunday walks, silly arguments about homework or vegetables. I was strict sometimes, maybe too strict, but I loved him fiercely. A mother's love can be a kind of blindness too. I see that now. As he grew older, little changes crept in. High school friends, late nights, doors closed more often than open. Normal things, I thought. Kids grow away before they grow back, right? I told myself it was fine when he skipped dinner saying he'd eat out. I ignored the pang in my chest when he rolled his eyes at my reminders to call home. Small things, not enough to fear. Red flags often come disguised as growing up. College took him 2 states away. I cried when we drove him there but smiled so he wouldn't feel guilty. He hugged me quickly, not tightly, not like before, and I told myself it was independence. He called often at first. Weekly, then monthly, then sometimes not at all unless he needed money. And I sent it every time. Parents don't think twice about giving. We worry more about not giving enough. Years passed. He got a job in marketing, married a woman named Jessica. Sweet girl then, or so she seemed. We were never very close, but I tried. I sent gifts, holidays cards, knitted blankets for their first apartment. They visited on Thanksgiving sometimes, but not every year. When they did, Jessica barely helped in the kitchen, always on her phone. Michael would say, "She's tired, Mom," though she never said it herself. Little distances, little cracks. Then they had a son, Ethan, my only grandchild. I cried again that day, but this time from hope. I thought a baby might bring us closer. For a while, it felt like it. They visited more. I held Ethan like he was made of light. He'd giggle when I made faces, fall asleep in my arms the way his father once did. The circle of life felt real, like threads knitting back together. But time changes people, even good ones. When Ethan turned 3, visits became fewer. Work was busy. Life was busy. They were tired. They sent pictures instead, smiling family photos where I wasn't present. I commented heart emojis. They liked them late, sometimes 2 days after. And one Thanksgiving, they didn't come. No explanation. Just silence until the next week when Michael said casually, "We had our own dinner this year. It's better for Ethan's routine." Routine. Schedules. Distance dressed as practicality. I said it was okay, but deep down, something felt off. A quiet warning bell. One I ignored. And then, that message. That brutal text that changed everything. But you already know that part. What you don't know is what he wanted the morning he stormed into my home. I stood facing him, hands still damp from washing dishes. He looked at me with a mix of urgency and fear and said, "Mom, did you change your will?" His voice shook, and suddenly I knew something had reached them. But what? Why panic now? What were they afraid to lose? The answer was coming, and it would cut deeper than his text ever did. When he asked, "Mom, did you change your will?" I felt the world pause, as if even the house held its breath. I dried my hands slowly on the towel, watching him. His eyes were unsteady, scanning my face for an answer he already feared. I didn't reply immediately. Silence can speak louder than words. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, a habit from boyhood, but now it felt intrusive. His shoes were wet from melting snow, leaving marks on my old oak floor. He used to take them off at the door. He used to care. I poured coffee for him, out of routine more than warmth. He sat stiffly at the table, fingers tapping, jaw clenched. Finally, I sat across from him. "Yes," I said calmly. His eyes widened, a mixture of shock and something darker. "Why?" he asked, though he knew exactly why. I didn't answer the question. Instead, I asked gently, "Did the firm call you?" He nodded, exhaling sharply. Jessica got the voicemail. Jessica. Always Jessica. Her influence seeped into everything, slowly, silently. He ran his hands through his hair, a nervous habit. He used to do that before exams in high school. I remember that version of him, the boy who believed I was his safe place. Now he looked at me like I was a problem to solve. "Mom, you don't have to do this," he said. "Do what?" "Make independent decisions." Stop waiting quietly for scraps of affection. I sip my tea. I didn't think it mattered to you. That sentence hit him. I saw it. A flicker of guilt or fear of losing something. He leaned forward. Of course it matters. We're family. A bitter line formed in my mind. Family doesn't abandon family. I didn't speak it aloud, but the thought settled heavy inside me. He softened his tone, like a negotiator. Look, things have been hectic. We've been busy. Ethan's school, work, responsibilities. Excuses dressed as explanations. He'd used them so often they sounded rehearsed. I asked quietly, busy enough to text me that message. His mouth tightened. There it was, the guilt he didn't want to face. He looked away, voice low. I didn't mean it like that. It was late. I was stressed. But words typed are chosen, not slipped. I didn't argue. I simply nodded. I understand. He seemed relieved, too relieved, as if expecting me to crumble, apologize, beg for love like a woman fearful of loneliness. He didn't understand I had crossed a line too, from hurt to awareness. A drop of suspicion formed in my mind, small but sharp. Why was the will suddenly important to him? Why panic only when money or inheritance entered the picture? He cleared his throat. What exactly did you change? His tone had changed, polite on the surface, pressured underneath. I stewed and fetched the folder from the drawer. Not the original, the new one. I set it gently on the table. He stared at it, hesitating, as if touching it might confirm something terrible. It's not final yet, I said, technically true. His shoulders visibly relaxed. He opened the folder, and I watched his face shift as he read. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something close to anger. You left most of it to a foundation. I nodded. For children without family support. He blinked. Ha! Mom, that's our future. Ethan's future. Our. Or his. Another comment-bait line formed naturally. He remembered me when money entered the room. But I said nothing yet. He closed the folder slowly, his voice suddenly careful. Jessica will want to talk to you. Tonight, maybe. We can figure something out. Figure me out like a negotiation contract? He left in a rush, without finishing his coffee. I stood at the door watching him drive away, snowflakes melting on my coat sleeve. Something inside me twisted. This wasn't just about the will. This was about value, mine. That evening, Jessica called. Not a hello, not a how are you. Just, we need to meet. Urgently. Urgently? Why so urgent now? What exactly were they afraid of losing? A feeling I'd been avoiding finally took shape, suspicion. Jessica arrived that evening without waiting for me to agree on a time. Doorbell rang sharply, not once, but 3 times, impatient. When I opened it, she stood there in a long beige coat, makeup perfect, eyes sharp like she was walking into a boardroom, not her mother-in-law's home. Can we talk? She said before even stepping inside. Her voice carried urgency, but not care. I let her in. She brushed past me, barely glancing around, though this house held every memory of the man she married, his height marked on the doorframe, trophies on the shelf, childhood photos smiling back at her. I wondered if she ever noticed any of it. She sat at my dining table as if she owned the chair. I made tea for both of us. Habit is hard to break, but she didn't touch hers. Instead, she folded her hands and spoke carefully. We heard you're making significant changes to your will. Straight to business. No small talk. No how are you feeling? Not even a polite thank you for having me. Just money, cold and direct. I responded evenly. It's my right to do so. She smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was the kind of smile people use when they are trying to stay polite while pushing a demand. Of course, absolutely. But you have a grandson. You should think about his future. I raised an eyebrow. I have. That's why I donated to children without families. Children who have nobody at all. Her smile faded. There was a few seconds of silence, heavy, uncomfortable. Then she leaned forward. Look, we're not asking for everything. Just fairness. Fairness. Where was fairness when holidays passed without them? When my phone stayed silent on birthdays? When loneliness sat beside me at dinner? I asked softly, do you visit me because you care? Or because you care about inheritance? That question landed like a slap. Her eyes hardened. No denial. No quick reassurance. Instead, she said, Michael feels you don't support us enough. Support. Another word for money. My heart sank. So this is about financial help? I asked. She didn't nod. She didn't shake her head. She simply didn't answer. A non-answer is an answer. I stared at my hands, suddenly noticing how thin the skin on them had become. Age marks, quiet witnesses to years spent giving, cooking, cleaning, nursing, holding, forgiving. And now these same hands were bargaining chips in someone else's future plan. Jessica finally spoke again, voice firmer. His hurt, you know. Your decision made him feel pushed away. Pushed away. I almost laughed, a tired, broken laugh. He pushed me away long before money was involved. She continued, if you'd talked to us first, we could have understood. Understood, or convinced. Her words were calculated, every sentence measured like negotiation points. I asked the question I feared the answer to. Would you still be here if I hadn't changed the will? She froze. That fraction of hesitation told me everything. I felt something in me crack, not just hurt, but realization. They didn't want time with me. They wanted security, ownership, guarantee. I was a woman on a ledger, not a mother. The room felt colder. Even the ticking clock seemed sharper, counting the seconds of my clarity. Jessica reached into her purse and pulled out a neatly printed document. We prepared a suggestion. Just something fair for everyone. A suggestion. A demand in disguise. The paper outlined how assets should be divided, percentages, trust funds, clauses. All written without my input. They were planning long before speaking to me. My eyes stung, not from anger, but disappointment that ran so deep it felt ancient. I pushed the paper back slowly. I am not a bank, I whispered, voice trembling. Her jaw tightened. This isn't about money, she said, too quickly, too defensive, which meant, yes, it was. My chest ached as I replied, if it wasn't about money, you wouldn't be here. And for the first time, she had nothing to say. A long silence sat between us, heavy like rain clouds. She stood up, picking her purse. Talk to Michael. Fix this. Not let's talk together. Not we'll visit more. Just fix the will. She left, closing the door hard behind her. I sank into the chair, tears finally breaking. I cried not because they wanted the inheritance, but because I finally knew the truth. If I had nothing to give, I had nothing they wanted. That night was the loneliest I'd felt in my life. The house was silent, dark, hollow. And as I sat there, one thought echoed in my mind. If love must be bought, was it ever love at all? After Jessica left, the house felt heavier than ever. I sat with my cooling tea, staring at the blank wall ahead of me. I thought of every birthday I planned for Michael, every feverish night I sat by his bed, every lunch I skipped so he could have shoes he liked. All those years, and now I was nothing more than a line item on an inheritance plan. And it hurt. It hurt in a place I didn't know existed. But that night, something changed inside me. Slowly, quietly. Pain didn't disappear. It transformed. It became clarity, and then resolve. If they wanted me only for what I owned, not who I was, then I needed to protect myself, not from strangers, but from my own blood. I was no longer just a mother longing for attention. I was a woman who had spent 68 years building a life, a home, and love, and I deserved dignity. I wiped my tears, stood up, and walked to my study, a small room filled with memories, photo albums, letters, drawings Michael made in kindergarten. I opened one album. There he was at 5, holding a crayon card, best mom in the world. Funny how love fades when convenience does. I closed the album gently, not with sadness, with acceptance. Everyone eventually shows what they value. Some value people. Some value things people own. I decided then I wouldn't argue explain, or beg. I would act with calm, deliberate intention. The next day I visited Linda, my lawyer, again. She saw something different in me. I could tell by her raised eyebrows. I wasn't fragile anymore. I was firm. I want to finalize the will, I said. Are you certain? She asked. Yes, I answered. Completely. She reviewed everything with me carefully. Most of my estate would go to charity, a fund for elderly women with no family support. I kept a portion for Ethan in a trust that he could access only if he visited me willingly as he grew older, not out of obligation, not for money, but love. If he chose distance like his father, the trust would redirect to the foundation automatically. Fair, not revenge, boundaries. When the papers were ready, I signed them with a steady hand. My heart was heavy but proud. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was freeing myself from dependence on people who saw me as an obligation. On my way home, I stopped at the grocery store. A woman my age was struggling with heavy bags. I helped her, and she smiled, saying, "You're so kind, dear." People forget kindness matters. Her words hit me deeply. Kindness is only beautiful when it's given freely, not traded for inheritance. That night I cooked myself dinner, simple soup, warm bread. For the first time in weeks, the silence in the house didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful. I played old jazz music, swayed a little in the kitchen like I used to when Michael was young. I even laughed, softly, but real. 2 days passed quietly, and then the storm came. Michael and Jessica arrived together, this time without calling. Their expressions were tense, serious. They walked in like people approaching a negotiation table, not their mother's living room. Michael cleared his throat. "Mom, we're worried about you, about your decisions." Concern sounded practiced, not felt. Jessica stepped beside him. "We just think you're being influenced or emotional. You shouldn't make such choices alone." Alone? Where were they when I was alone for years? I spoke calmly. I made my choices with a clear mind. Michael's face tightened. "So you're really cutting us out?" I looked into his eyes, not angry, just tired. "I'm choosing peace." He exhaled sharply, pacing. Jessica whispered something into his ear, too low for me to hear, but her eyes flicked toward my living room, toward my furniture, toward value, not memories. A painful realization settled. They weren't here for me. They were here for what was mine. And then Michael raised his voice, frustration boiling over. "Mom, this isn't fair. After everything we've done for you." Everything? A few visits? Occasional calls? I kept my voice steady. Fairness isn't measured in inheritance. It's measured in love. Silence. Thick. Uncomfortable. Jessica stepped forward. "You can fix this, you know. Just reverse the will." Her tone wasn't a request. It was expectation. I shook my head gently. "No." Their faces changed instantly. Warmth gone. Masks off. Money reveals truth faster than time does. Michael's voice dropped ice cold. "Then don't expect us to stay involved." That line should have shattered me. But instead, it set me free. His words echoed in the room like a slammed door. "Then don't expect us to stay involved." But instead of breaking me, they clarified everything. They weren't warning me, they were revealing themselves. I stood there quietly, hands resting on the table. No shaking, no tears. I'd already cried enough in private. This time, I met Michael's eyes with a steadiness he didn't expect. "You already left long ago," I replied softly. He flinched. A small movement, but I saw it. Truth stings deeper than anger. Jessica crossed her arms. "So that's it? You're done with us?" Her tone was more offended than heartbroken. Not a single word about love. Only loss. "No," I said, voice calm. "I'm not done. I'm simply moving forward." Michael stepped closer, frustration building. "We're family, Mom." I nodded. Family is love, not entitlement. Silence again, sharp as glass. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing like he was the victim. "We didn't think you'd do something so extreme." Extreme? Protecting myself? It amazed me how a simple boundary shook their world more than years of emotional distance ever did. Jessica pulled out her phone. We should involve someone. Maybe a counselor. A mediator. Mediator for a will, not a relationship. I said gently, you came here today not to talk. You came to reclaim something you assumed was yours. Jessica's eyes narrowed. We are your only family. Who else would you give your house, your savings to? I looked around, at the family photos, the worn sofa, the life I built alone. Mothers who live in nursing homes without a single visit. Women who raised children and got forgotten. I see myself in them. Jessica scoffed. So Charity deserves more than your own blood. I answered quietly, Charity didn't abandon me. Michael's voice rose, desperate now. Mom, stop this. Think about Ethan. He deserves security. I smiled sadly. Ethan will have security. The trust is for him. But he will inherit love, not money. If he grows up kind, he'll have access. If he grows up distant, the foundation will. Jessica froze. That wasn't part of their plan. Michael stared at me, stunned. A conditional trust. Yes, love must come willingly, not rented through inheritance. His face flushed with anger. So we have to earn it now. You had 20 years to nurture it, I said, voice soft but unshakable. He stepped back, not physically, but emotionally. The distance I felt for years became visible between us, like a hallway with no bridge. He opened his mouth, closed it, then finally exhaled sharply. This is unbelievable, he muttered. You're ruining our future over a text message. I stared at him, heart aching not from his words, but from what he couldn't understand. It wasn't the message, I said. It was the years around it. Jessica grabbed her purse aggressively. If you change your mind, call us. Conditional love, always with a price. I won't be changing it, I replied. She blinked, shocked I didn't chase them, begged them to stay, offer compromise. For the first time, she looked unsure. She grabbed Michael's wrist, pulling him toward the door. He followed, silent and pale, like someone walking away from something he never thought could walk away from him. At the door, he stopped. For 1 second, one fragile, flickering second, I saw the boy he used to be. The child who hugged me tight, who cried when I left him at preschool, who once said he'd take care of me someday. Mom, he whispered. I waited. Maybe an apology. Maybe love. Instead, he asked, are you really okay being alone? I took a slow breath, my voice gentle, steady. I've been alone for years. I just stopped pretending I wasn't. He didn't reply. He just stayed, shocked that the mother who always said yes finally said no. Then he left. The door closed. Firm. Final. The house was silent again. But this time, silence wasn't loneliness. It was peace. I walked to the window and watched their car reverse. No hesitation, no last wave. They drove off, tires crunching over snow, leaving tracks that would melt by morning, just like expectations eventually do. When they were gone, I exhaled deeply. My hands trembled with adrenaline, but my heart felt alive. I had taken back something I didn't know I lost. My worth. I turned off the lights, made myself chamomile tea, and sat by the window watching nightfall, the world quiet, almost sacred. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for anyone to call. I wasn't afraid of growing old. I was free. The days after their departure were strangely quiet, not empty, not painful, just real. No forced expectations, no waiting by the phone, no wondering if they'd visit for holidays. I woke up without checking messages. I cooked breakfast for one without feeling pathetic. It was as if the years of emotional hunger finally ended, and I learned how to feed myself. The first morning, sunlight fell through the curtains in long warm strips. I brewed coffee and sat on the porch wrapped in my favorite wool shawl. Winter air bit gently at my cheeks, but the cold didn't bother me. I felt stronger than I had in years. A thought bloomed slowly inside. Peace is heavy at first, but it gets lighter every day. I started walking daily, small loops around the neighborhood. I noticed things I once rushed past. Frost on mailboxes, kids waiting for the school bus, a neighbor's dog always excited to see me. People greeted me kindly. I smiled back, this time without aching inside. One afternoon, I saw an elderly woman struggling with grocery bags. Her name was Margaret. I'd seen her around but never spoke much. I helped carry her things inside, and she insisted I stay for tea. Her home smelled like cinnamon and old books. We talked for hours about children, life, disappointments, joys. She told me her son moved to another country and rarely called. Our stories overlapped like threads woven by the same loom. Before I left, she held my hand and said, "Visit again. It feels good to not drink tea alone." I smiled, sincerely. Maybe we weren't alone after all. Maybe we were each other's missing piece. Over the next weeks, I met more women like her, widows, grandmothers, forgotten elders. We formed a small group, meeting every Sunday. We laughed, shared recipes, exchanged plants, told stories of youth and love and regret. In their company, I discovered something precious. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's chosen. Meanwhile, Michael didn't call. Not once. At first, that fact jabbed at me like a dull thorn. But slowly, it lost its power. I stopped expecting. Expectations are heavy. Once released, life becomes lighter. Weeks later, something unexpected happened. A small envelope arrived in my mailbox. The handwriting was messy, uneven. When I opened it, a tiny crayon drawing slipped out, a stick figure grandma holding hands with a small boy wearing a blue shirt labeled E. Inside was one line in crooked letters. "Grandma, I miss you. Ethan." My heart squeezed so tight I had to sit down. Children love without terms, without conditions. They don't understand inheritance. They understand hugs, cookies, bedtime stories. I placed the drawing on my fridge like a treasure. Later that evening, Jessica texted, short, formal. "Ethan made that at school. He asked about you." Just one sentence, but it felt like a door cracked open, not wide, but enough to let light in. I replied simply, "Tell him Grandma misses him too." No bitterness, just truth. She didn't continue the conversation, but it didn't matter. The seed was planted. If Ethan grows with love, time will guide him back to me when he's older. My door will never be locked to him, only to entitlement. Spring arrived. My garden bloomed, tulips, marigolds, roses. I knelt in soil, hands dirty, heart clean. Some afternoons I sat outside with Margaret and a few others, sipping lemonade, talking about everything and nothing. And one sunset, as I watched orange light melt into the horizon, a feeling washed over me, gentle, warm. I survived the heartbreak, and I rebuilt myself, not as a mother waiting for validation, but as a woman with value beyond legacy. I no longer feared old age. I feared only dying without ever choosing myself. And now, I had. Summer warmed the days gently, like life itself was apologizing for winter. My garden turned into a soft orchestra of colors, bees humming like little workers of happiness. Each morning I watered the plants and felt a calm I hadn't tasted in years. Slow, deep, grounding. Sometimes I still thought of Michael. Moments would flash like old film reels. His small hand in mine on his first day of school, his teenage grin when he passed his driving test, the warm weight of him asleep on my shoulder when he was little. Memories have a way of softening even the hardest parts of the heart. But now when those memories came, they weren't knives. They were flowers pressed between pages, beautiful, but from another time. I hoped he was well. I hoped life was kind to him. I did not wish him pain. Love doesn't vanish just because it is bruised. It simply learns distance, a respectful one. And then one afternoon in August, as the world glowed gold behind my living room window, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door, and there he was, smaller than I remembered somehow, like pride had deflated into something softer. His eyes were tired, not angry. Jessica wasn't with him. "Hi, Mom," he said, voice low, unfamiliar after so long. I felt my chest tighten, not with hurt, but with something closer to healing. We sat at the table, the same one where our confrontation once cracked the air. I made coffee for both of us. This time, he drank it slowly, like he wanted to stay. He pulled something from his jacket, that same crane drawing of Ethan and me, edges a little worn now. Ethan keeps asking to visit you, he said, voice almost breaking. He remembers your stories, the cookies, the garden. I smiled, heart softening. He's always welcome. Michael nodded, eyes glistening. He wasn't here for money. I could feel it. He was here because something shifted in him too. Maybe time taught him what youth never sees, that parents are not immortal. That love isn't a resource to be collected later. That distance leaves regrets nobody wants to carry forever. He swallowed hard. I'm sorry for that message. For everything. His voice cracked. I didn't rush to forgive. I let the moment breathe. Then I reached across the table, gently touching his hand, a bridge rebuilt slowly, carefully. Life teaches all of us, I said. I learned to stand alone. Maybe you learned to look back. He stayed for hours. We talked, not about the will, not about inheritance, but about life. His job, my garden, Ethan's favorite dinosaur. He left with a softer face, promising to bring Ethan next week. I didn't know what the future held, whether we would heal fully or meet in careful steps. But healing doesn't need perfection, just effort, consistency, time. That evening, sitting with warm tea and the soft hum of crickets, I realized something. I may grow old, but I will never grow empty again. Because I filled myself with peace, self-respect, and friendships that bloomed like flowers in unexpected soil. Children don't owe us their lives, only love. And parents don't owe children inheritance, only memories. My story isn't about punishing my son. It's about finding myself after heartbreak. It's about choosing dignity over desperation. It's about realizing that love is real only when it's freely returned. And if you are listening, whoever you are, wherever you are, maybe you felt forgotten too. Maybe someone you raised turned away. If so, hear me. You deserve love that stays, not love that negotiates. You deserve laughter at the table. You deserve phone calls without reason. You deserve visits that aren't tied to death or documents. You deserve a life that you are proud of, with or without anyone's approval. I found peace. You will too. And maybe, just maybe, when I am truly old, Ethan will come running into my garden with dirt on his shoes and a smile on his face, not for inheritance, not for obligation, but for love. I'll be waiting with open arms. Not desperate, just open. Did you like my story? Please like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far this story of mine travels. Healing begins the moment you choose yourself, even if no one else does.